Illustrator has another tool available to us in order to transition between colors. We've talked about the gradient tool, which allows for linear in a row or radial in a circle with multiple colors, but that pretty much is the limitation of the gradient tool, either across in a straight line or around in a circle. We have another option for us though, and it's called the mesh tool. It's on the toolbar next to the gradient tool, looks like a spider web. It's right there. Okay, so if I click the mesh tool, what's going to happen is when I click on an object, okay, so I'm going to make an intersection right here, I'm going to get a set of guidelines that intersect right where I clicked, okay? And every new place that I click, I'm going to get a new set of guidelines. These are mesh lines, okay? Every place that this happens is a place where I can drop color. So I can take a swatch from here, click and drag, and add it. I'm going to drop it right here on top of that anchor on the intersection. Okay, and that's going to take that color and fade all the way around that intersection out into the surrounding quadrants. I can click onto an individual anchor, and I can also take and grab a color and plop it right in the middle of a shape, right, this square rectangle here that's right here in the middle, and it will turn, oops, sorry, let's try that one more time. There we go. And it will now take all four of these intersections and make them yellow and fade outward. Okay. The really cool thing about mesh tools is that you can now take your white selection arrow and you can manipulate and change how these interactions happen. You can take the handles and stretch color further or compress it. You can stretch the green further. You can really manipulate quite a bit. Okay, and we have really an infinite number of color changes that can happen. So this is really how we're going to do some fine-tuned, more precise color changes. So some other basics that we need to know about this. If you noticed, my shape here would look just like the others. It was green with a black outline. And if you notice right now, now that I've applied a mesh, I no longer have a stroke. I don't have an outline. That's because as soon as you put a mesh on, you no longer can have a stroke on an object. If you want to have an outline, you'll need to make two, and the second one will go on top and it will have no fill and a stroke for the outline. Okay. Secondly, if you notice, we kind of started with that predominant green and everything else moved around it. So you do need to select your object and start with whatever the main color, whatever your main idea is. Like gradient, you need to prepare your swatches first. So if you want a custom color, you'll need to do that ahead of time. I also want you to notice that when I apply a mesh to a circular shaped object, my mesh lines are curvy as opposed to straight lines like they were over there. This, for the record, is a really great way to make circles look like bubbles, which is fun. And the same rule applies no matter what you are doing. So if I take a mesh tool and make mesh lines here on this irregular shaped object, notice the lines are going to curve and change. I also want you to notice, so if I click in a new spot, I'm going to get a brand new set of intersections. But if I click on an existing line, so if I click here on this horizontal, it will bisect that and make a vertical. Okay. Generally speaking, the rule for meshing is that less is more. I can hit the Alt key and I can delete mesh points. Okay, so you can do some editing. And if you need to undo, if you just decided you did not like your mesh whatsoever and you want to go backwards and you can't just undo it, the trick to do that is to go to Path and go to Offset Path. Make sure that the offset is 0 and then say OK. Nothing will look particularly different, but if you notice here in my layer palette, I now have a plain path and I have the mesh. So I could recolor and start this one again. So it's just an easy way to undo any kind of meshing that you're happening. So I encourage you to explore this. It's a little complicated, and yes, it's a little more finicky, but you can do some really cool coloring options with this.